Hello, and welcome to the ADE Spotlight Podcast. My name is Jim Haggerty. As a provider of substance abuse assessments and client management databases, we have the privilege to work with terrific partners across the United States and Canada. In this series, we plan to talk to some of our colleagues about their work in the field of substance abuse assessment, prevention, and treatment. By sharing knowledge and experiences, it is my hope that we can all learn from each other. What we have learned, what the challenges are now and in the future, and how the ever-evolving technology impacts our work. ADE remains committed to working with our partners and using our experience with both substance use assessment and technology to provide the tools our colleagues rely on. As we learn from each other, we improve the value of our services.
My guest today is Terry Brown. Terry is the Program Administrator of OnSite Substance Abuse Testing and New Frontier Counseling Services. Terry, we're very happy to have you here this afternoon. You've been a long-time partner of ours. I think I'm not going too far out on a limb when I say that it's been a pretty successful partnership, I think both ways. I think ADE provides you a good way to keep track of your clients and some of their activity. And along the way, we've learned quite a bit from you about what it is that programs such as yours need in an electronic record. So I think it's been a real win-win relationship. And I'm hoping this afternoon that we can get a little bit into talking about the electronic client records and how they are of value and some of the pros and cons of the new technology that we're working with. But why don't we start, Terry, by having you introduce yourself to the folks who are listening to this. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your history, and then about OnSite.
First of all, thank you very much. And you are right. Myself and Jacob, that's my business partner, have been happy from day one with our partnership with you guys. My name is Terry Brown. I'm the Program Administrator for OnSite Substance Abuse Testing and New Frontier Counseling Services. My business partner is Jacob Fakori, as he is the Program Director. Our services are pretty unique because we not only do drug testing, which is what on-site substance abuse testing does, but we also provide mental health and substance abuse counseling. That is what New Frontier Counseling Services does, and ADE gives us the flexibility where we can combine both services to help out a person, an organization, and a company.
How long have you been providing these services, Terry?
It'll be close to 15 years now.
Yeah. What have you seen change over the years in terms of the technology for gathering client data?
You know, not just the technology, but just the industry as a whole. It's so much more sophisticated. You have to be much more faster with answers and resolutions, just based on how I would just say district and circuit court operations have become even more efficient, because they have cases they got to get out, whether it's pretrial or people who violated probation. We have a lot more specialty courts now. We have sobriety, we have drug court, we have veterans court, we have mental health court. It's just so much sophisticated than when it was when we first initially had started.
Do most of your referrals come from the criminal justice system?
Initially, yes, but through the years, we have grown quite a bit, because a lot of our services or a lot of our referrals that came from circuit and district courts, a lot of times people they had lost their driver's license. And for people who are trying to or were trying to reacquire their driver's licenses, they had to go to the Secretary of State. Well, since we were retaining all their records, as opposed to recreating the wheel, all they had to do was just fill out an application that the driver's license assessment from the Secretary of State would have them do. We just let them know that, hey, it's just so much more efficient. You can get everything you need here. You can fill out your application. If you need an attorney, you'll get yourself an attorney and kill two birds in one stone. We do the drug testing that the Secretary of State requires, and we tie it up in one little bow and get you out. we can dictate, we can tell them whether you've been successful with your probation. It just seemed like it was very fluid. It wasn't nothing that required us to force or get someone to come back to us. It just seemed common sense to me. So,
do you provide your services only in Wayne County or in other counties as well?
Not only throughout the state of Michigan, but we also provide those same services at a federal level throughout the United States, because we also do DOT testing for the Department of Transportation, but we also have consuls here on staff that provide substance abuse counseling at a federal level for those same employees at a DOT level. So, for instance, if you lost your license or you incurred a ticket with a CDL license and you lost it or was suspended, well, you got to go to a SAP, which is a substance abuse professional, to try to reacquire your driver's license. And again, those services that we offer, not only at a federal level, a state level, county level, and a city level.
Oh, you've got your fingers in a lot of different pies. That's great.
Well, the world has gotten more aggressive. It's gotten global. It's not a stretch for what we're doing, because at its core, we are a full-service outpatient treatment agency. It's just important that for whatever industries need us, they know of us. Because at the end of the day, we produce legal documents and we manage it. And again, ADE allows us to do that.
I think that's a good segue here. When we're going to come back and we're going to tell folks how to get a hold of you, and if they have questions about your services, how to contact you and all of that. But I want to segue to what you were just talking about a minute ago, about some of the legal documents and keeping track of the data, and at the same time protecting the privacy of the individuals. You're talking about on the federal level and on the state level and on the more local level. You deal with those issues all the time. And I would imagine that over the course of your career, you've gone from keeping paper records to using more technology to keep electronic records. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what that transition's been like, some of the positives and negatives of that kind of transition.
Well, obviously the positive is that, it allows you to be more flexible. And obviously you can answer whatever questions that you incur for whoever your customer base is. You can, resolve any issues or situation that, that they may encounter. As with anything, transition was time consuming. People are learning a new tool. Sometimes people don't like change. Sometimes people are scared of or in fear of technology, but it's with that, as with everything else, it's follow through. I will admit that initially just trying to transfer our hard copies over to your software system wasn't difficult. It was just the time consumption behind it, but it was necessary because, again, for what things that we do and for what our services are and for the information. So, like, for instance, it's not enough to put the drug test results. We have to put the person's prescription, or at least make a copy of that prescription. Obviously, we got to keep track of fees and payments. Lab confirmation when we send urines out for those instances that the urine was positive, and we get back confirmation, we're able to store that. There's a section that we have to implement notes that we had to transfer over from hard copy to electronic. But once all that information is in, it's a smooth machine, and again, you're able to get out what you project to your potential customers and your current customers, which is speed and efficiency and fluidity.
I think that's a good point. I think one of the things that we try to keep in mind here is that it's really the end result of the reporting out in a consistent and rapid manner really drives what we do here. So it sort of bears out what you were saying. You don't, but you
know what?
Go ahead.
You know what? Let me say this too. The great thing about ADE, it allows us the flexibility for what we need. You guys have always been accommodating to modify, upgrade, whatever adjective you want to use. You made provisions in your software for us to give the customer what they want, and I probably like that more than anything. Our relationship. I really appreciate that. You've always been flexible. Your staff has been great. Never any complications, a hard time, and it seems like your staff understands what it is and why it is that we need. Because, look, our customers are attorneys, and they're sticklers for details and what they want to see and how they want to see it, be it prosecution, criminal, judges, magistrates. That's who we deal with. So.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. It's very nice. I want to ask you about other changes too, though. Over the years, you do a lot of drug testing. Clearly, what kind of changes have you seen in some of the drugs of abuse? Have you seen changes in patterns of use? Have you seen certain drugs popping up more frequently than you used to? There's a lot of attention in the media currently about opiates and opiate overdose and the like, and that seems to be getting a lot of attention lately. It reminds me, I've been around doing this a long time, and in the mid to late 1980s, there was a lot of time and attention and money spent on addressing what was a fairly new phenomenon at the time of crack cocaine. And then, in recent years, there's been a lot of attention put on methamphetamine. So in some ways, the more things change, the more they stay the same. But I'm wondering if you've seen any changes in drugs of abuse or patterns of use, or anything that you've seen either in your work as drug screeners or as your work with counselors.
Well, let me say this, and I'm gonna try to stay above board. But anyone that walks through our doors, here, let me rephrase that. The biggest change that I can tell you between now and then when we first started, people are more educated now, and it's because of the internet. They know who, what, when, where. They know more about what the drugs that they're taking almost better than we do. They know the duration. They know they try to steer you into what type of test they want to take, meaning they may not want to take a urine. They may want to take a saliva because they know what the duration is, because every drug has a window of detection. But then you have some who are addicts, and whatever is the cheapest drug is the drug they will take. It doesn't have to be, in most cases, illegal. It could be illegal. We have a lot of amateur chemists out here. Nothing never stays the same. You're always going to play detective. This is a cat and mouse. I think what's happening and what has to continue to happen is that government agencies have to talk to each other in order to know what's coming, because the users know that the departments or divisions or industries aren't talking, which is the reason why I think that we're in the situation that we are now with regards to opiates. Only now you see people are now trying to address the connection between doctors and pharmacy, and with how prescriptions are being given so freely. We still have a long way to go. I will say that the state of Michigan has, they're in the midst of trying to create, if they haven't already, I haven't checked the progress, but they're making doctors now input their patients that they're assigning opiates, I guess, as a means for the state to keep track. That someone's going to have to keep track of that, but at least they're starting with putting opiate information for whoever they prescribe. But then again, You have the legalization of marijuana, which I have my personal feelings about that. But you have gas stations that sell different types of bath rocks or their own form of not medical marijuana, but their form of K2 weed that they sell. So it's just so much more accessible, and it's so much more open. And again, they're knowledgeable. They know. But you know what's funny? We have 8 locations. And this is what always fascinates me. It is so socially economic that no matter what race, creed, color, or financial background that you come from, everyone may travel a different path. They all come to one destination when they come to our facilities. Somewhere along that journey, they all come to the same destination. And I always find that fascinating. What may be popular at one location, let's just say Washington, whatever drugs are popular there, may be different for what drugs are being used in Oakland County, or what's being used in Wayne or Livingston or Macomb. And that's always been fascinating to me.
Me as well. You touched on a couple issues that I'm very interested in. That's the legalization of marijuana. I talked to a lot of people in a lot of places about that. There's a whole variety of opinions out there, but it's changing the whole narrative. I'll just give you an example. We did a substance abuse assessment. One of our customers did on a client of theirs, who through the entire assessment denied using any marijuana at all. No drug use at all, period. But when he was asked to list his drugs of choice, he said, I use marijuana 7 days a week. So there's a conflict there. And then when he was pressed on it, he said, I don't use marijuana. He said, I use medical marijuana. So there, in his mind anyway, there was a huge distinction between the medical marijuana that he was using and what he viewed as illegal drug use.
That is one instant that we have to deal with on a regular basis. That is so real. What may be real to you may not be real to me.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and this gentleman, when he saw a question on the assessment that said something like, do you use street or social drugs? Well, he said no. He thought there was a sort of a judgment in that question. And his use of marijuana wasn't the same as using street drugs or social drugs. So I think that's the kind of discussion, and you're bringing this up in a very a great way, but that's the kind of discussion we're going to have going forward over the next several years. Michigan, I think, tried to get the question about legalizing recreational marijuana on the ballot in 2016. I mean, this conversation is really just beginning in a lot of locations. So
we had a write-up in a magazine, Ferndale and Friends, for one of our locations, where we had an attorney in on the conversation regarding the first issue was about the legalization of medical marijuana, and the other one was regarding prescription drugs. And I think that what the state is trying to do is to try to get a hold of the distribution portion of it. I think that what's going to happen is I know we have a lot of medical marijuana facilities throughout the state of Michigan, but I think that what's being tried, or what they're trying to do is have it where the distribution of marijuana would be the same way as you would go to a pharmacist. I think that even though that currently may be the way it is now, I think if it's up to the state, I think they want to have it where the pharmacist is in control of the distribution of that marijuana as it is with any other drug. I think they're placing more of a heavy edict or criteria for the pharmacist too, with what drugs that they have to handle and manage. And obviously, of course, with the doctors, because even now, when you try to restore your driver's license, if you're currently taking a prescription, it is required that the doctor fill out. It's a 5-page document. It's a statement of examination form, or rather, a physician statement of examination form that the doctor has to fill out, acknowledging that drugs that they prescribe will not interfere or impede with them driving or reacquiring their driver's license. And if they don't, and if that defendant or if that person doesn't have it, if they're trying to acquire their driver's license, if they don't have it, they're not getting their license. So they're holding the doctor's feet to the fire too for whatever drugs that they're prescribing. Whereas before, 10 years ago, that never would have happened. A form like that never existed. And that's probably another example for a question you asked earlier about how much has changed, how sophisticated it's gotten.
Well, like everything else, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Does it make it more difficult for you or your clients?
Well, for me, that's a good thing. But again, that's my opinion. There are some who may feel that that's impeding their rights. Especially when your license is being held as in exchange that if you don't give me what I want, and these are the consequences and repercussions. It's a fine line that we're all trying to balance between doing what's right and not impeding or interfering in someone's right. But we can't have any I hate when I hear drunk driving. That really bothers me. But even more so because of the legalization of marijuana, industry is trying to figure out a way how to, just like they would with drunk drivers, how to do drug drivers, meaning people who are under the influence of medical marijuana and they're driving. Listen, we haven't even got to the portion where some of my customers are employers with safety programs. They have safety policy programs in place that you can't come to work. I get that you drink, but by the time you get back to work the next day, the window of detection, and there's that word again, the window of detection, that person's probably sober the following day. Whereas with medical marijuana or marijuana period, what's the window of detection? So, that's a slippery slope that everyone is encountering or facing. So, yeah.
I agree. When we talk about legalization of recreational marijuana, that's one of the questions that we generally come to eventually is what does this mean for employers? So yeah, there's a lot of discussion to be had about this. But you said something interesting just a minute ago. You talked about drunk driving, and I think by that you meant sort of a traditional drinking and driving offense. But from what we see around the country, the number of arrests for a traditional drinking and driving offense is going down. Now that can be attributed to improved information, improved education. It could be attributed to a lessening in emphasis by law enforcement. But I think traditional drinking and driving, from what we've seen, is down. But the idea of a drugged and driving issue is on the way up, and certainly that's a question when we look at legalizing marijuana or medical marijuana as well. Have you seen in your work that shift? Maybe less drinking and driving charges, but more driving under the influence of other substances?
Well, right now, there's nothing out in the market for policemen to pull people over for what they deem as drug driving, other than their suspicion. And then obviously, of course, the smell. But then again, you have people who, there's edible marijuana. So, there's nothing out as a tool for a policeman to, detect or capture someone, whether they're doing drug driving, like you would with someone that's drinking alcohol. But here, I'm gonna say this. I think that I think the reason why what you're seeing maybe drunk driving numbers go down is maybe not one thing, but probably a collaborative of things or a combination of things. We got Uber now. I think Uber has played a huge role with reducing maybe drunk driving. But then you got Mothers Against Drunk Driving. You have it being commonly known. We got sobriety courts. We have a lot of things in place where people are aware of the consequences and repercussions of drunk driving, especially in a knowledgeable educational sense. But you still have people under the influence which could fall under prescription, which could fall under sipping of syrup, the medication syrup that kids use, or again, medical marijuana. There's more ways to be under the influence besides just alcohol. Those are some of the challenges I think that policemen they encounter every day. And it's a judgment call. But I think that when they pull someone over, they got to take them to the hospital to draw either blood, or I think they draw blood and try to figure out what it is to support their case of pulling that person over. Obviously, we get the tail end or the back end of it. We test that person based on how the court wants to, whether it's a pre-trial or after sentencing. Once it's been proven that whatever they were pulled over, we gotta make sure that they don't repeat that. But that's it's hard to say. I don't really rely on those numbers because I think that sometimes when people do polls, you can make it look like what you want it to based on what your argument is. I think that everyone has been watching the states that have approved medical marijuana to see what their numbers are, what their, what's happening with them with regard traffic, with regards employers. We can mention Colorado. I know they're definitely watching that. I can't think of the other states off the top of my head, maybe California. But with regards to Michigan, I noticed there are a lot more raids now for those facilities that sell medical marijuana, whether it's edible, however, butter or whatever, however way they're dispensing that out. I think that employers are they're not feeling that. There's some pushback from employers because there's a risk. See, with employers, their issue is with liability. When employees want to file, claims, which is why in their eyes safety is everything. So they could care less what is legal or not. Insurance doesn't recognize it, and the premiums that I pay monthly doesn't recognize it. So in their eyes, they don't really care about the legalization of medical marijuana because they got to pay for it if you file a claim, if you get hurt on the job.
Interesting.
Hey, workers' compensation. They're not trying to pay that. They're not trying to pay that. They have a safety policy in place. Most employers should have that jobs involve risk, or getting hurt on the job that involves labor, especially skilled trades, and you coming to work under the influence. If you get hurt on the job, you mean I got to pay for that? I'm not paying for that. I'm not paying for that. Insurance is not set up to support that.
Do you work with employers to set up these safety programs?
Well, that's one of our services. But yes, we do, and we have worked in collaboration. It's not something you can do by yourself. You have to work with human resources. You have to work with those that have a risk management, a policy to put in place so that it applies to everyone. For our role, it's a drug-free workplace policy where we have to work with human resources, or in some cases, if we're not working with human resources, we're working with insurance, the person who wrote the policy, or some organization may have a risk assessment lawyer on staff. So, but it can't be just us telling you how and what you should have. It has to be a collaborative thing.
Yeah, but they seek you out for this kind of counsel?
Well, it depends on, depending on what the situation is, and for those who even want to do it. There's some that don't want to do it because either they don't see, they don't have the money for it. There's another way they want to go about doing it. But also, and this is this part is my opinion, I think that sometimes employers are in fear of losing their good workers with such a stringent drug-free workplace policy. Because if I push it, I'm going to lose some of my best workers. Well, if I lose some of my best workers, we can do the math, right?
Yeah, boy, that's interesting. So their fear is their thought is they'd rather not know.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. There are a lot of companies that take that chance. They take that chance. I can't speak for the big companies, but the small to medium companies, that exists.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that every company should have some sort of drug-free policy or some sort of employee assistance program in place?
Well, ideally, you would like that, but I think if you had to set a priority, you want to set the ones that involve labor. Anything that involves physical labor or risk, where you can get hurt on the job. I think anywhere that you work somewhere, there's a chance you can get hurt. I think that should be the priority.
And I was not aware that this is a service that you provide. I think that's great.
Oh, yeah. You know what, Jim? There's again, we deploy a lot of programs, and our services are needed in so many areas, but each one carries its own identity. Every industry is not the same. And again, what's great about ADE, it allows you the flexibility to give the customer what they want, and if they want to track it from beginning to the end, they can. That's what I appreciate more about ADE. I think that probably what would help ADE is somewhere down the line, even though I know a lot of the labs provide those same services, but mainly toward lab confirmations, where they collect the urine and, they have their own database where you can, track a person's lab history. But, that's just a piece, a portion of it. We're trying to get everybody in on what we do as a service, where if someone signs into our ADE system, they can not only see what they did when they had to do an instant test, they can see what happened when we sent that urine out to the lab and it came back for a confirmation. They can see the results. Oh, this person had to do counseling. Oh, okay, I can also go to ADE for the same person and see what they did for their counseling. So, it's to save that person a lot of time from looking at 4 or 5 different softwares, whereas suppose they can go to ADE, they get everything they need right there.
Right. Yeah, that's sort of our mission. And I think one of the good things too is as you know, Terry, when you call us with an issue, you get to talk right to the guys who built the software.
Immediately. And
more often than not, the change you request is going to be done very, very quickly. So we're really proud of that, and that's a big part of our mission. But there's going to be a lot of people listening to this, Terry, that are involved maybe on the district court level or involved in counseling program. How can they get a hold of you to talk about the services you provide and to talk about partnering with you?
They can give us a call. They can either go to either one of our websites. OnSite Substance Abuse Testing website is just what it is. It's OnSiteSubstanceAbuseTesting.com. Or they can go to NewFrontierCounselingServices.com. There's a section or a tab where it says communicate with us or contact. They can contact me via email. They can call our main office in Ferndale at 248-399-8032. Again, our main office number is 248-399-8032. You know what? Let me say this too. ADE allows the court to also have access to your system so that they can see in real time what their defendants are doing. That's another hit that has worked well for us too. The faster you put the data in real time, it's more accommodating for the court while they're in the middle of a court session or in the middle of a specialty court. That is also what's great.
Right. Terry, listen, thanks for your time. So the conversation was overdue, and that was my fault. But I really appreciate your time. You've been a friend to us for quite a while, and I know the folks here in our office speak very, very highly of you. And so we were really happy to get you on this conversation. And I just want to thank you for your time.
Well, you know what? Sometimes we get caught up with what we do and we forget. It's been great. I love our relationship. Maybe next time let's talk more about driver's license restoration with how your software helps out our customers, our clientele, for those that complete probation or parole, and how it's an easy transition of taking their records from ADE and providing that information to the Secretary of State, because again, that's another one of the services that we offer to help people reacquire their driver's license. Okay.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think the whole driver's license restoration topic is confusing to people, and so yeah, we're going to reach out to you. We'll get some clarification on that.
Jim, thank you very much.
Hey, keep up the great work, Terry.
I appreciate you.
Okay.
Good night, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the ADE Spotlight Podcast. I hope you found it insightful. If you have any comments, suggestions for future topics, or would like to be featured in an upcoming episode, please let us know. You may reach us by email at support@adeincorp.com.